let's see, what does it say? Yeah, okay. And I welcome everybody. This is wonderful. We've been chatting a little bit with Kelly and some of the other writers who are with us. So glad you could be with us. And we're recording. This will be uploaded to YouTube sometime in the this year. And I'll do it as fast as I can. I just uploaded a couple things today, and it takes forever when they're long. So, but anyway, Kelly has been coming to Auntie's bookstore for years and years and years. I better stop. Anyway, for some years now, and she is beloved by everyone. She is a wonderful, wonderful children's writer. She writes a lot of things about science in a way that children can understand it, and people like me, and I sincerely appreciate that. And she's very popular. We're so fortunate to have her with us tonight to share her story of her writing history and how she got started maybe and how she picked this and all the fun she's been having. So I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and let her just do her thing.
Well, hello, all you grown-up writers. Maybe some of you are children's writers too. It's something to look into if you're not. I'm going to go through Kelly's writing life, and I made a PowerPoint for you. That's how insecure, I mean, how conscientious I am. So I'm going to go from the beginning of the slideshow, and look, there's me. I'm on the screen. How about that? My name is Kelly Milner Halls. I have been a writer for most of my life, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my writer's journey with pictures. Yay! Now, there are two girls in this picture. The taller girl is my big sister, Kim. And she was a very girly girl. The little girl was me. And I was not a girly girl. Now, I got in trouble a lot because my mother really wanted me to be a girly girl. She wanted me to be very feminine and sweet and cute like my big sister. It was never going to happen.
Kelly, we're not seeing your slides. You have to do share screen.
That's what I did.
Oh, and then
okay, let's try it again. Hold on. I did share screen. Let's close this up. Let's try one more time. You see me now?
No.
Nothing.
No.
We see you. We just don't see your picture.
Okay. Yeah, so if you click
now, do you see it?
It goes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I must have missed a button. Sorry, recording. You get to see that rough draft again. It's all right. We're going to revise and clean it up a little bit. So.
Oh my goodness.
Can you see it now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Starting over. There's little Kelly and her big sister, Kim. Little Kelly was trying to be a girly girl, but it was never going to happen. This is Easter Sunday. My mom liked to dress up her little girls. My big sister, Kim, loved being fancied up. Look how happy she looks. Do I look happy? No, because I wasn't. Tight patent leather shoes, scratchy petticoats. Who puts white gloves on a 3-year-old? That is insane. But I tried to be good. I tried to be what she wanted me to be, but it was never going to happen. This was the real me. I marched to my own drummer. My best friend was a boy named Craig Bottoms. Yes, his last name was Bottoms. That has to come into a book somewhere. I was Robin. He was Batman. I loved Batman and Robin. I loved Rat Finks. Who remembers Rat Finks? You have to be a certain age to remember Rat Finks, but I do. Monsters, lizards, frogs, snakes. I was a tomboy. I liked to be outside and getting dirty. That was my favorite thing to do. I was never going to be a girly girl. Although I had to dress like a girly girl because I grew up in a place called Texas. And little girls had to wear dresses to school. I think that was true in most schools until a certain year. Yeah. But there I am, cute little Kelly in 3rd grade. Miss Grayson was my teacher. Miss Grayson was the most beautiful girl in the world. I thought she looked like Emma Peel. Again, certain age information there. I loved Miss Grayson. Miss Grayson happened to love me too. Now, I got in trouble a lot because I was always in everybody else's business. I wasn't a bad kid. I was just a busy kid. And most teachers said, Kelly, sit down. Kelly, be quiet. Kelly, what are you doing? But Miss Grayson was different. Miss Grayson, first and foremost, said, I don't think she's ignoring her teachers. I think she can't hear. And they sent me to testing and I was 40% deaf. That's part of the bad kid right there. Miss Grayson saw it before my parents did. Miss Grayson also taught me to love fiction. I hated fiction because reading was so hard for me. You have to tack all the words together. You have to tack them into sentences. You have to make the paragraphs make sense. And then you got to make a whole page work. I couldn't hear it in my head. All I'd ever been read to was Dr. Seuss. Not the racist ones either, the others. Now, Miss Grayson read a book aloud that changed my world. She read Charlotte's Web. And that was the first time in my life that I realized the work you put into reading a book had a payoff. And that payoff was story. And I know Miss Grayson did that for me because Fern was me. Fern was outside and playing with boys and collecting critters. I fell in love with fiction because of Miss Grayson. Third thing, instead of saying, Kelly, sit down, Kelly, be quiet, she said, hey, Kelly. I said, what did I do now? She said, did you know you're a good writer? And I loved it. It felt so good to feel like I might have a talent besides getting in trouble. Miss Grayson changed my life. All of us have a teacher like Miss Grayson, or were a teacher like Miss Grayson. Yes, I see you, my friend. Now, she said I was a good writer. I said, that's interesting, but I was too busy with lizards and frogs. Didn't really take it to heart right away. Then there was Mr. Phillips. Mr. Phillips was my 6th grade English teacher. And he said, hey, Kelly, you know what? You're a good writer. And I said, again? A good writer? Now, I was ready to start thinking about it a little bit more, except I was too busy with horses. Not ready for my future. Loved the horses, though. Then I got into high school English, and my high school English teacher, Mr. Milner, he let me grade his papers because I was so good at English. He said, you're going to have to take AP English. I said, ew, Beowulf, are you kidding me? Gross. What can I do to get out of it? And he said, I don't know. I guess you might have to get a journalism class. So I applied for journalism. Mr. Miller knew I could handle AP English. He also knew I belonged in journalism. And he gave me a feeder to want to take it up. I joined journalism class and I found my destiny. Because all those questions I asked that made my teachers insane, all that diving into somebody else's business was exactly what I had to do to be a journalist. So I fell in love with high school journalism. I absolutely loved it. And we won some awards in our high school journalism class. Do you see this little doughy little man right here? His name is Andrew Smith. He became my very best friend, Andy to me. And I fell in love with journalism, but I was a little busy with Donny Osmond. Yes. I admit it. I saved all my babysitting money so I could go to Las Vegas and dream about Donny Osmond. Oh, he's so cute. Well, I wasn't going to marry Donny Osmond. That was not going to happen. Instead, I followed this boy, Dave, to Brigham Young University. Was I LDS? No. But I went anyway, because he did. And I studied communications. That was radio, television, journalism, and public relations. It was a bracket major so that you could cover anything that you might get a job for. Loved it. 6 weeks later, I thought I wanted to be an investigative reporter because that was during Watergate, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And the movie came out and I said, that's for me. I'm going to do that. But 6 weeks later, my boyfriend dumped me. I kissed too passionately, so I was not going to be a good mother for his children. I don't know how he thought he was going to have children. There's no magic to it. He dumped me, but it was okay because I've fallen in love with skiing. I already knew how to ski, and Sundance was like my backyard. So I got a season pass. Even got to meet Robert Redford once. I had just ordered honey bread and milk. I got the last glass of milk. Bob walked in, said, where's the milk? And the woman said, he pointed to me that I had the last glass of milk, and I said, want it? He said, no, that's fine. That was my big fancy moment with Robert Redford. Skied, season pass, studied some, not near enough. I skied and I got a job at a record store where I made my first gay friend, which is why I was allowed to grab his rear end that way, because he wasn't gay. It was non-sexual, so it wasn't going to get me into any more trouble than that. Got a job at a record store, loved that too. It says I have to admit Cheryl. Cheryl, did you get in? Cheryl, you there? It says connecting to audio. Okay. So what did I do next? I married badly. Of course I did. I knew nothing about how to pick a good mate. I married a terrible man who liked to wear ladies' underwear as much as I did. Wasn't the best choice I've ever made. But I did get two amazing young girls about it. I got two daughters, Carrie and Vanessa. Carrie was 7.5 years older than her sister, but now they are the best of friends. This is my Carrie. She manages Aunties. Yes, she does. And this is Vanessa. She works part-time at Aunties when COVID's not around. Right now, she's been on the bench. Got two great kids out of it and a therapist. Divorce was coming. And my therapist reminded me that I could write. And I said, I could write. He had me do a house plan of my life. And my kids were the biggest part of the house. And my husband, who didn't like me, was another big part of the house. And in the very back, there was a little teeny room that said writing. My therapist said that should be a whole floor. So I went out and bought a desk for $12. And I put it in my coat closet. That's the closet you see behind me. And I decided it was time to follow my dream, but not to be an investigative reporter. I decided my dream was to write for children. Exactly the same skill set, exactly the same materials that you need, just for kids. Why? Because grown-ups were boring. I don't want to write about street construction. I don't want to write about politics, although I love politics. I want to write about weird stuff like the Turkey Olympics. I want to write about ghosts and Bigfoot. Stuff that's weird that kids love that I also love too. That was where I was meant to be. And that's what I did. I decided to start writing. Now, I knew nothing about how to submit material. I used to send things to anyone that I could find on a list. I got the Writer's Markets Guide, which is a really great tool, whether you want to write for kids or adults. There's a children's version and adults version. And if you want to write, you might as well get both, or at least check both out at the library. Children's Writer's Guide, the guide to Writer's Market and Children's Writer's Market. That's the Writer's Digest versions. So I got those and I just started sending out manuscripts. Got lots and lots of rejection notices. Why? Because I didn't know how to analyze what they actually wanted. If you want to write for a magazine, you got to get 2 or 3 copies of the magazine and read them over first. Get a feeling for what they want. You can do it at the library. You know, you can get 3 years at the library and sit there and just look them all over, put them back in the bin, go home once the library's open again. So at first I was just throwing stuff out. Then I finally figured out, okay, I got to analyze these markets better. I'm not making any progress at all. And so I decided that I should fine-tune where I send things. Now I had one article called Pistol Packing Paleontologist. It was about a paleontologist at Petrified Forest National Park who not only had a degree in paleontology, he also had a degree in law enforcement. Because so many people were stealing fossils, they needed somebody on site who also had the ability to arrest people when they broke the law. Great story, great pictures, everything you need for success. I had been marketing that article for 2 years. And when I finally figured out how to say, they might want this one, they won't, I sent it to the Right magazine and they changed 2 words. It was already ready. I just hadn't done my marketing homework. So that's how I started. I started with the magazines and newspapers. I wrote for a lot of newspapers because at the time there were a lot of children's newspaper sections. Chicago Tribune had their kid news, great fun to write for. Atlanta Journal-Constitution had news for kids. The Fort Worth Star-Telegram had PG page. And this was curiosity. They were an insert that a lot of newspapers bought and put into their newspapers. I wrote a ton for them. I found out I had to write 12 articles a month to make a living. So I did. I have 4 fat binders of all my clips. And that's over 1,000 articles that I had to write to support my children. That's what I did. Newspapers came first. Then here's Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's getting bumpier. It's about goosebumps, how R.L. Stein had decided to get scarier in his new books. I don't know they got much scary, but I also was the first one in the Chicago Tribune, the first one in any publication to break the big news that children were watching South Park. Oh, what a scandal. Everyone thought it was an adult cartoon series. I, like every parent on the planet, knew kids are watching it too. I broke that story first, and then it got into Time magazine after we did it. Then I added magazines, highlights for children, U.S. Kids, Hullabaloo. I wrote for children's magazines too, because they want lots of material. Now, why did I start with newspapers? Because newspapers are daily publications. And they need to fill all their sections every single day. So there's a whole lot more opportunity to sell your work. Magazines tend to be monthly. So there's only 12 opportunities each year to fit into the magazines. Newspapers were more lucrative. That's why I focused on them first. And then I expanded into magazines, which were also fun, but you didn't get as much work. Did both. Now, I eventually ended up writing for adults too, because you get to know the editors in one section and they suggest you to other sections. So I ended up writing a lot of features for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Denver Post, Fort Worth Star-Telegram, New Jersey Monthly Magazine, Family Fun Magazine, Teen People, Detroit Press. There's our spokesman. That's how I made myself at home here. When I first moved here 21 years ago, I went straight to the editor and said, can I freelance for you? And I did all kinds of weird stories, like on butterfly gardens and what do you put in a 5-gallon bucket? Weird stories that were really fun to write. Washington Post a couple times. So that's what I did. Now, after I had more than 1,000 articles, I switched to children's books. Why? Because a writing friend of mine named Marilyn Singer, she's a very famous children's poet. She said, do you understand when you sell all rights, which you had to do to magazines at the time, that you are cheating other children's writers? Because you are teaching people that it's okay to steal all rights and give you nothing in return, except for a $200 paycheck. Yes, $200. That's why I had to write 12. Some were less. So I took the challenge and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write children's books. And one of the first ones I wrote was this one here. It's a picture book. See, I bought a baby chicken in the middle. That's one of the only fiction books I ever wrote. But it was based on nonfiction, because when my Carrie, my oldest daughter, was in 2nd grade, she got the chicken pox. And she couldn't be in her school picture. So I took her to the general store, which is like the general store down on the Division. And I bought 2 baby chickens, one for her and one for her sister. That was a consolation prize for not getting her picture. Now, I bought 2, and then my sister said, hey, can we get some and keep them at your house? I said, sure. My mom said, hey, can I get some and keep them at your house? Okay. My grandmother said, can I get some and keep them at your house? By the end of the summer, I had 16 chickens at my house. So this book is about a little girl who got 1, and her sister got 2, and her cousin got 3, and her other cousin got 4. It's a counting book. And it said by the end, when all the dust had settled, we had more than 50 head. We had chickens in the kitchen. We had chickens in my bed. We had baby chicks most everywhere, as you must know by now. I think my family's lucky that I didn't want a cow. So it became a little picture book, but it was so dangerously close to nonfiction that I knew that that was where I belonged, and I could never make that magic strike again. So I did nonfiction, and nonfiction for kids. Now I have about 50 books, closer to 60 now, nonfiction books for kids. Love it, absolutely adore it. Fought every single time to convince the publishers that my book was a book that kids would love. And then COVID hit. And things rolled to a stop.
Yeah.
And I wondered, how am I going to make it work? Because not only was no one buying books, there were no more school visits to help pay the rest of the bills.
Right.
You can visit a school and talk, and they pay you to talk to the kids. And I teach them about researching critical thinking skills. But what am I going to do now? Well, a publisher approached me and asked me to blurb a book, and I fell in love with the book. And I wrote them back and said, hey, I like your books. Can I write for you? And they said yes. Now, these books were not royalty books, the top of the line of all publishing. These were work for hire books, where you get a check and a byline, but no more money. But these books paid very nicely. They were only $10 for kids to buy. My last traditional book was $33. There aren't very many kids buying a $33 book. $10 books, and they were wonderful. And I didn't have to force them. They said, hey, Kelly, want to write a book about World War II heroes? Sure. Want to write one about World War II heroes kids? Sure. How about one about the Titanic? Want to write about the Titanic? Sure. How about horses? You like horses? Yes. All of a sudden, my new career is writing 6 weeks to write a single book for a single check and then move on. And I suddenly have all the money I will ever need to pay my bills without begging, without pleading, without trying to convince someone this is a good idea when I know it's a good idea because I hang out with kids just like Gina knows when a kid likes a book. I get to just kick back and do what I've learned how to do, which is write. Don't turn your nose up at all right for hire. Some of it is worth doing. So here are the 3 on the end: Voices of Young Heroes, Voices of Ordinary Heroes, and Titanic. Those are the work for hire books. They are nice books that a kid can buy for $10. A teacher can buy a class set without breaking the bank. These are books that are worth doing. The one on the right is a traditional book. That's from Little Bigfoot. That's Sasquatch in Seattle. That's My Heart and Soul, which is cryptozoology, mysterious animals that may or may not be real. These are my most recent books. So why do I do it? I like the ad. I have to admit, I like being covered in the newspapers and the magazines. I like pretending I'm famous and then knowing no one knows who I am. It's the perfect of both worlds. But that's not why I do it. I do it for the kids. Because these are my readers. These are their faces. This is how excited they get when we play together. This is how excited they get when they read my books. And this is where I belong. Because I'm not a grown-up. I'm a 63-year-old kid. And I will always be that 63-year-old kid. Now, remember that guy, Andy? This is Andrew Smith. This is a novelist. He called me up one day because he saw my website online. And he said, I'm glad one of us did it because he was in the newspaper with me in high school. And I said, well, where's the novel? And he said, what makes you think there's a novel? And I said, because I know you. And I know there's a novel. Where is it? He said, it's in my drawer. I said, get it out. We're going to sell it. Because I had learned how to sell books. And I made him look like the smoothest, most experienced writer of all time because I helped him rewrite and correct all of his query letters and all of his synopsises. His first synopsis was 37 pages. No, short. And he sold his first book. And now he's got all these books. Now he's a really well-known young adult novelist because he called me up and said, I'm glad one of us is doing it. Now, he loves what he's doing, and it's where he belongs. I love what I'm doing. It's where I belong. Do I make as much money as he does? No, he drives a Range Rover. I drive a 1999 RAV4. But I bet I'm happy. And that's that. Now, and I still call him Andy, even though no one else is allowed, because Andy was then, and Andrew is now. So that's my story.
Wow, Kelly.
Now I can try to stop sharing. How do I do it? Stop sharing. There. So do we have any questions? Does anybody want to know how I did it? Anything about what you might be able to do in children's writings? Anyway, you might be able to apply what I do to what you want to write. It's not so different.
Switch back to hosting so that I can watch the room, because we'll have some people come late. Then you don't get distracted.
Oh, I need to admit this person.
Go on my name and click on more.
Yeah, click on more. Make host.
Yeah, there you go. And it'll ask you if you're out of your mind.
And I said yes, because we all know that's true now.
And we'll let Gary in. We've got a couple of people here, so let's see. Where did he go? Ta-da. Okay, keep my eye on that now, and you can just talk to people and have fun, okay?
Okay, does anyone have any
Pardon?
questions or comments or anything?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Now, are you your own agent or did you sign up with an agent?
I signed with I did a writers conference in Boise, Idaho, and there was an agent there. And I always do my homework before I go to a conference to speak, because I want to know who's going to be there beside me as staff. So I'd already done research on her, and I knew she only took fiction. So I didn't even think about it. And I most of my life, I've worked without an agent and done just fine. So, and that's especially true of nonfiction, but it can also be done in fiction. When they say they don't take unrepresented manuscripts, that just means you have to query first. It doesn't mean you can't ask them to look at it. And that means your query letter has to be really good. So even though they say, no, I won't look at your manuscript without an agent, that's not always true. It can be done. So I went to this conference, and we did a bookstore event before we did the conference, and she was looking at all my nonfiction books for kids, and she said, I love nonfiction, but I'm afraid of it. And I said, well, I don't blame you. I said, what are your fears? And she said, well, I'm afraid, how do I know that the writer has really done their job? How do I know that they're doing accurate nonfiction? And I said, come here. And I went back to my bibliography, and I said, do you see this bibliography? I said, this is probably a quarter of what I actually used. There wasn't room for everything in the bibliography. If you find a bibliography that has legitimate sources, you know that you have a writer who puts the work in, who really finds the 3 reliable sources for each topic they write about. If they don't have a bibliography, you really are going to have to ask, what sources do you use? You want to know that it's somebody who studied journalism or somebody who writes as if they studied journalism. And I, of course, studied journalism in college. So the next morning she said, hey, did you check your email? And I hadn't brought my computer. It was just a one-day event. It was just, Boise, it's just an hour flight away. So I said, no, I didn't bring my computer today. And she said, oh, because I want to represent you. And I said, but you don't represent nonfiction. And she says, I do now. So I signed a 2-year contract with her.
Oh.
And it was horrible.
Oh,
she was a lovely person, and she did a really great job selling fiction, but she just didn't get nonfiction. And so it took forever for her to process my contracts, and I'm paying my bills with my money. I can't wait. I need this done quickly. And I was so used to working directly with the editors and directly with the publishers that it would turn around real quickly and then I could get paid. But she was like, well, I'm going to Australia for 2 weeks. And I'm like, Australia for 2 weeks? 2 weeks, my lights are going to be turned off. So it was interesting. But at the end of 2 years, I wrote her a letter and said, I've given this a fair shot. I really feel like that I do better on my own. It's just, I think I just got used to doing it on my own. So we parted on good terms, and she's no longer an agent. Now she works for Smithsonian. So, but she still gets a percentage of the 2 books she sold for me, which is okay. She did help sell them. But anyway, it wasn't for me. I like a more direct contact with my editorial people. I want to know exactly what they need, their voice to mine, and having that intermediary, that in between, was difficult for me. I do wish I'd had one. I sold a book to HarperCollins called Saving the Baghdad Zoo. Never occurred to me to retain the movie rights, because I thought it's a nonfiction book. Who cares? Until somebody came to me and said, I would like to give you $20,000 for the movie rights for Saving the Baghdad Zoo. And I couldn't get HarperCollins to respond to them. They had the rights. and they got half and I would get half. 10 grand would have been a lot to me, but they never even answered the person.
Oh,
So
no.
it's not a bad idea to have somebody look over the contract. You can get a lawyer to do that. You can get a friend who has experience to do that. There are certain things you do want to watch out for if you're going to go it on your own. And that's one of them. I learned a good lesson that way. But I'm pretty content without an agent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's great news. That's great to hear.
And I think you can do it too with fiction. I don't think that's necessarily independent to a nonfiction children's writer. I think if you learn to sort of step over the speed bumps, that you can do it with fiction too.
I have a question, Kelly. I have been writing for the adult market for a while in the inspirational category and working on adult things, but I have 3 or 4 children's books, including my horse story, which you read years ago. And I've worked on that, worked on it. And then a couple others that I have done while I was reading them to children when I was teaching. And before I die, I'm not planning to die, I would love to publish them. And like you said, getting in to that whole world of agents, the first thing they say is, do you have a following? What's your social media platform? Are there 2,000
like anybody
people?
starts with a following, it's not like anybody starts with that. I don't think you have to do that. There are a lot of Christian presses that don't require agents because they're smaller houses, and a smaller pool is not a bad thing. It might mean a smaller advance, but let's face it, a lot of books never earn out their advances. So a small advance, if you get 2,000 instead of 10,000, you earn it out faster. So you're not a negative to the publisher. And they are more willing to work with a newer writer, a less proven writer, because they're not paying huge advances. So I think you probably have your teacher's retirement, so you don't have to depend on the income.
No, I'm not worried about income, actually. I mean, we're not rich, but we have everything covered.
Yeah.
So they are not Christian books per se. They're so I wouldn't need necessarily to go to a Christian house, but
it's
so
like Highlights for Children. Highlights for Children is not Christian, but they call it moral residual. They want their articles to all have moral residual. In other words, I did an article called Klondike and Snow. It was about orphan polar bear pairs, cubs that the zookeepers had to raise. And they loved it because it had that moral residual. Here's an innocent little creature that needs protection, and it got it at the zoo. That's the moral residual. So
yes, and my stories have those. They have the meaning that's behind the meaning, like, okay. So just is your suggestion, because a lot of people are self-publishing. Of course, then you have to find an illustrator. And I did that for my inspirational book. I went self-publishing KDP, and I've been very happy with that. But I'm just started at the beginning, like, do I go and pick up that Writer's Digest version, children's
well, there is a Christian version of that. There's a Christian writer's market.
That's right. There is.
And if you go to the library and check it out, you could even just spend a few hours at the library doing the research on who might be interested in the material that you have. And then you write your query letters, and a lot of them are online, so you can query with email.
Okay, good idea.
And a lot of them are willing to take manuscripts now. For a long time, it was 50-50, but now most people have converted, and we'll take your manuscript. They'll either take it as text in the email because they're trying to avoid, viruses and things, or they'll take it as a word attachment. But it's still within your reach. It's not something that you can't do. I would go to the library and check out that Christian writers market. It's not published by Writer's Digest. It's an independent publisher, but there are more and more Christian imprints at a lot of bigger publishers. So, and they're always looking for material because the Christian marketplace is big. There's homeschooling. It's huge for the Christian marketplace. A lot of homeschooling people go straight to those publishers because they know that there's not going to be the evil of evolution like that was in my Wild Dogs book. The homeschooling loved that book, but they suggested putting a white paper over the part about evolution and writing an alternative text in, and that's what they did to my book. Which, okay, it's your book once you buy it. Whatever you want to do to it is okay with me. But there is a market for Christian literature, and it's an important market because, you know, we need to help our kids understand, you know,
Exactly.
being
Exactly.
kind.
I know what you're talking. It's Sally Stewart's Christian market
Exactly,
guide.
that's what it is. I interviewed her once. She's a lovely person.
She
I think
is.
she's still living. I hope so.
I haven't.
We're all
need to
getting
get,
up
like I
there.
said,
We're getting dusty in these old days. We come and we go. That's kind of how it works. But hopefully we have a few more years.
I've got 10 years on you.
Well, like I say, let's stick around for a while, right?
Agreed. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned the query letter. Do you have suggestions for what should be in that?
Well, you've already heard the advice that everybody gives you, that don't make it any longer than a page. It has to be short, to the point. When I write a query, I open with what's intriguing about the subject I want to write about. So that could be fiction or nonfiction, either way. You would open with a teaser. You know, Eleanor was in love with Gary, but Gary was obsessed with toes. Now, obviously, that's no story that I've ever read, and but if you were an editor and you read that, you'd say, "Oh my goodness, toes,"
Mhm.
and you might finish the query letter. So I start with a hook. I start with a hook about what I want to write about, and then I say, my manuscript is 22,000 words on odd obsessions.
Mhm.
You know, which might be a really cool book and something that I might write. Maybe not you, but maybe you would. But that's what I'd start with. And I'd say, this is my manuscript of this. I'm qualified to write this because I studied journalism. Who cares? Because I've been fine-tuning my craft for 15 years and I feel I'm ready for publication at this point.
Mhm.
Don't be embarrassed to admit that you're beginning, because everyone starts at the beginning. And I don't know that you guys might all be well published. I don't know, but I started at the beginning.
Mhm.
And I made tons and tons of mistakes with editors, and they were very kind to me. They would send me notices saying, you know, I think you need a little more market research, because this is not the kind of thing we would like to see.
Mhm.
And they were very kind and directive to me. And as long as, once you stop licking your wounds because it didn't sell, then you can start analyzing what they actually said to you instead of what you think they said, which is, I hate you, don't come back. That's almost never what they're saying. It just feels that way when you get those rejection letters. And I have stacks of them, stacks and stacks
Oh
and
my
stacks.
gosh.
You know, that's part of the deal. That really is part of the deal, because you're learning, you're getting your PhD in rejection so that you can get your PhD in acceptance. But it's always going to be a struggle. I don't, you know, there's a few writers that get an editor that stays with them forever and they just keep pumping it out. I knew Tom Clancy for a while before he remarried, and he's those bricks, you know, those door props of books. I never edit anything. It's the first draft, goes in just the way it is. And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, you need to be edited, because there's so much crap in your books. I can't get through them. He was a very nice man, but you know, ego was as big as his books, but he was very nice. He had to teach me what gun I needed now that I was a single mother. I never got a gun. Me and guns don't get along, but he was
Probably
nice,
a
man.
good thing he's not going to watch this video.
Well, he's dead now, so he's maybe watching from heaven. So you know, I still like you, Tom. You're still a good guy.
She didn't say that before.
But I think, you know, keep your query short, keep it interesting. Remember that your query letter is an audition. You're showing that you can write, that you can be intriguing, that you can draw a reader in. I think a lot of writers forget that it's your foot in the door. It's not just the story you're selling, it's you that you're selling. It's your abilities as a writer that you're selling. So after you write a query letter and you're happy with it, get 3 or 4 of your writing friends to go over it and listen to what they have to say, because they're fresh eyes and they can tell you, I'm sorry, this part was really boring, I didn't get it. Now, if it's the toes part and it's just your you know, your idiosyncrasies are different than theirs, you just ignore that part. Because if that's the book I'm working on a book right now called True Stories About Poop. Not everybody will want that book and not everybody will buy that book, but I will sell that book because I know kids will love it. and it's super interesting and educational. It's so weird. But there's a place for the books that you're willing to make the best books they can be.
I bought a small discussion book about about that very topic. There was one of those humor books that were put out. It was all the different, how they looked, and it told you something about your health based on the description.
Oh, how interesting. That's not quite what mine is. Mine is more weird little stories. Like, did you know there was a king had a 2-person toilet because he wanted to have someone to talk to when he went poop? So there's a side-by-side toilet, like those desks. And there was a job, I would not want this job for the king, of cutting the poops off.
Oh, no.
I mean, history. So there's history and there's science and there's, I mean, all these weird stories about poop that are like, holy cow, who knew this was true?
Yeah.
So, but you know, there's a place for everything. And if you just don't give up.
What was that one about? What, Walter? The
the farting dog?
Farting dog. Yeah, that's it.
Good book.
Kids just love that.
Kids love that book.
Yeah, they'd come running in the store. Where's Walter? Where's Walter?
Where's the fart book? I know. You can finally say fart without getting in the corner, right?
Yeah. And they break out laughing because they got to say the word and it just cracks them up.
Still can't say it in class, though. You can only say it in reference to the book.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to ask you, Kelly, you're talking about the 21-year or longer history of your writing. Have you noticed change occurring in the marketplace and in
You know, there's always change and it's always cyclical.
Okay.
So you'll think, you know, vampires are dead. There'll never be another vampire book, you know, because we had all those vampires then, the shiny ones that sparkled in the sun. Vampires, wait, what? And so those die for a while. And then utopian comes. Utopian, oh, it's a horrible world. And then COVID comes and utopia doesn't look so fun anymore. But they all cycle and they all seem to come back. So if you have a ghost book, you know, a ghostly love story, and there's been too many, it's saturated, just sit on it. Don't throw it away. Sit on it because it will cycle through. It'll come again. Right now, you're going to see, I mean, I'm noticing a resurgence in otherworldly type books.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's something that everybody's interested in. It always happens, you know, whether it's an angel that's going to help his loved one that's still on earth, or whether it's, you know, a kid that has to do something good or risk becoming a demon. You know, they're all things that are universal in theme and can approach a lot of topics. So if you've got that manuscript and it's been saturated, the market is just sick of it, Harry Potter, you know, well, it's about time for a new Harry Potter, you know, especially since J.K. Rowling has gotten herself in some controversy. But there's, you know, there's always time. It's just wait and it'll come back around. It changes, but it always circles back. And a really good book that's done with a flair, something about a popular topic with a slightly different tilt, you can find a place for that. That's something I've always been really good at, taking, like the Chicago Tribune loved me because they could say, I need a Halloween story. But it had to be something new because they've done Halloween every year for how many dozens of years. And so I gave them an article called Dead End Jobs. It was about people who work with dead bodies. It's Halloween, but different. Dinosaurs, but different. Ghosts, but different. And if you can take that little different, if you can take your story and add that twist, then you're going to improve your chances of getting published.
Can I ask you another question?
Sure.
I'll tell you, I have my children and my grandchildren and a whole lot of people that are friends and business people have said they love my voice. And I've written all these fun little stories for my kids and grandchildren, you know, and they're saying they want me to publish by reading them online and do a program with children. I don't even know how to market that or monetize something like that. I think that YouTube, if you have what, 1 million followers or something.
Yeah, but again, nobody starts with 1 million followers. My daughter has just started, my youngest daughter has started customizing dolls and doing some things, and she's following some people that make a lot of money because they take Barbies and Monster Highs and they clean up all the factory paint and take off the hair and do it all over again in a whole new twist.
Oh,
and they make the dolls, and they have patrons, which are people that are willing to, if you want to be my patron, give me $5.
Right.
Well, you get enough $5 and you're making some serious cash.
Gotcha.
So you could do the same sort of thing with a YouTube channel in terms of, you know, the stories you do. You could do a podcast. And if you, again, your key is going to be to find that twist. Like my daughter, we noticed that they hadn't done natural history dolls. So she's going to do Nefertiti, you know, and a cave woman. And she's going to do some things that have a natural history slant just to get her foot in the door.
Yeah.
And then she can do whatever she wants after she gets her foot in the door. And, you know, you want to do the same thing. You want to do a soft twist on a children's podcast or a children's YouTube channel. And you can do your own books. The nice thing about that, if you have a few followers, then eventually they start buying your books that you self-publish. Please don't buy 1 million copies. Please don't do that, because you'll end up with 500,000 copies in your garage that get wet when we have a flood someday. It's not a good idea. You want to buy a small amount of stock and do print on demand or something like that through Amazon or one of the other, you know, publishers. But it is doable. And, you know, Ken Nesbitt, he's done a lot of traditional books, but he's also self-published a lot of books.
Okay.
And he's done quite well with it. In terms of finding an illustrator, Ken always goes to India and hires illustrators. It's a whole lot cheaper. And I felt bad for the American illustrators, but Ken had a really good point. He said, you know, I understand that I should be able to pay an American illustrator enough, but I don't make enough of my books to do that. But you have to understand, when I pay an Indian illustrator $500 to illustrate a whole book, where I would have to pay $10,000 to an American illustrator, that $500 pays for his bills for several months. So it's the equivalent of paying $10,000 to an American author without all of it coming out of my pocket. So I'm giving him a way to make a living. And I thought, you know, that's a really good point. This is a global economy. So you can hire it, and we'll see if we can get Ken to come on and talk about how he picks his illustrators.
Nice.
But you can hire an illustrator, very gifted illustrator from India or Africa or any of the countries that are on different economic, you know, baseline than America is, and advantage them without taking so much money out of your pocket if you want to self-publish.
The issue with my stuff is that I have members of the family that are artists. My daughter-in-law is a known artist on the internet already, and she's already making money at it and doing commissions and stuff. And she's just waiting for me. She's one of the people that's saying, come on, let's get this done. You know, and
is she willing to do it? Is to speculate on her illustrations? Is she willing to do it without money and then do the split, whatever you make?
She kind of looks at it, it's her kids or my grandkids. She kind of looks at it, it's all a part of blessing the grandkids, you know?
Well, it's really important to get somebody good. You don't want to get somebody not good, because the kids will walk away and so will their parents. If it's your friend who thinks they're really good at illustrating, but you know, really they're not that good, they're not good enough.
Yeah,
then
no,
don't use them.
Contacted by someone from Disney, and she has some connections down in Southern California as well, because she's doing what's popular, and that's the cartoon animations.
Yeah.
You know, for superheroes, only they're, like you said, there's a twist. There's little difference.
There's money to be made on YouTube if you're willing to be that pioneer. And at our age, it's a little unusual, but that's not a bad thing. You know, that makes you a little different from everybody else who's there. I mean, it was funny because Microsoft came to me and said, well, you want to make a series of videos on weird stuff for us? And I said, my kids would be way cuter in the videos because I'm old. And they said, we like the idea of you being kind of an older weird lady. We like that. And so I said, well, okay. And we did 10. Unfortunately, they weren't on YouTube. They were on, what's Microsoft's browser? I can't remember. They have a browser and they were only on that browser. So nobody ever saw them. Nobody ever found them. But they're great. You can go to my website and watch them because I have them linked to there. But a twist is not a bad thing, Yeah. They wanted me to do a series on granny video games, and I totally would have done it. I play video games with Vanessa. Vanessa's a big gamer. My youngest.
I bet you could make a ton of money doing that if you could move that forward,
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's a lot of people that are shut in or differently abled.
Yeah.
Would take advantage of it.
Plus, it's not like we're the only people with gray hair. I mean, you have beautiful red hair, lovely for you. I don't. I have very gray hair.
I help it. It's just because I help it.
But you know what I mean? We're not the only. There are thousands, millions and millions of people our age who might be delighted to find somebody interesting on YouTube talking about things they're interested in. So, I wouldn't just because we're not, 30, doesn't mean we can't be pioneers. We can dive in there and give it a shot.
I love your attitude about that. Sometimes I wonder, if my time hasn't passed.
Oh, no, your time hasn't passed. We're just freer. You get a certain age and then you don't care. I used to be so paranoid because I'm 40 pounds overweight, and what are they gonna think? I'm fat. And then I'm like, what do I care if they think I'm fat? Okay, yes. And I'm also 63 and I also have wrinkles, and who cares?
Right.
Finally, we're at an age where, I don't care. You can call me fat if you want to. Yeah. Fat's not necessarily a negative. It's a nice, soft, cozy hug. And gray hair is pretty.
It definitely is.
It is. Yeah, they just called Rossellini. What is her first name?
Isabella Rossellini?
Isabella. They just called her back after being gone for 20 some years from the major makeup. And they told her when she got to her 40s, they said, I'm sorry, but our customer is a younger customer, and kind of hurt her feelings.
Well, sure.
We let her go. And now that she's in her late 60s, they've asked her to come back because they said it's a new audience. It's a new customer base.
Yep.
And they want to see her. They want to see lines. They want to see real older people with beauty,
Yeah.
And how to enhance, because they're looking at older people as beautiful.
Let me ask you something. Who looked better at the end? I know Robert Redford isn't dead yet, but who looked better, Kenny Rogers or Robert Redford? Poor Kenny Rogers had a terrible plastic surgeon who did him no favors.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And then there's Robert Redford, who's done nothing, and he looks fantastic. He looks the way a person is supposed to look at a certain age. Right. There's beauty in every age group, and it's just a matter of us. We need to claim it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, he's got all those lines and stuff. I mean, I think he's so sexy,
Agreed.
Jump in here because we have a lot of people that have to leave.
Okay.
Had some that have left already. It's 7. I did know that Jerry had wanted to make a little announcement to the group towards the end. I don't know how long you folks all have. If you want to stay another few minutes, that would be great. But I would like to give Jerry a chance to announce, because I think you had a book come out or something, Jerry.
Jerry, what did you get?
Yes, I have a book. It is called A Man's Passion. And you can see it. Yeah. And it is.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's published through Austin Macaulay. And it came out live on January 9th. I haven't really gotten the totals on it yet, how my sales are doing, but I'm hoping it's doing pretty well. I'm not sure I'm doing marketing through them, but I'm also doing my own marketing as well. So trying to get as many people interested as I possibly can through Amazon, or not Amazon, through Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, social media. And so, but yeah, that's the thing. And I'm hoping that he's a galley one of these days so she can read it and give me a decent review on it. So, but anyway, that's it. That's the whole gist of it.
Gorgeous. What a pretty book.
Yeah, it's based on 60 Minutes about 3 years ago did a deal on the Peace and Justice Center in Montgomery, Alabama, and I saw the piece and I was very interested in it. I decided to do a story based on that, on a great grandmother and her great granddaughter going to this museum, and the great grandmother tells the great granddaughter about an incident that she had when she was a child about a man being lynched in Florida.
And Jared, can you type in the chat your email address or something so people can get a hold of you
Right.
for information? You can click on
Yeah.
it to be able to see. We've had some people type little messages about having to leave and stuff too. So yeah, any parting messages if you want to share a website or anything like that, feel free to put that in too. So there's Jerry's outlook.com. Jerbear is JERBEAR 1310 at outlook.com. So if you're interested in following up with him on where that's available, or you said something, Jerry, did you say about offering if people will read it and give you a review, or was that what you were saying? Yeah. You might check with him on that. I'm going to save the file if it'll let me. Ta-da.
And I would like to say something briefly.
Yeah, sure. Just give me a second here.
You bet.
I don't know that it did that. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Save chat. Sorry about that. Losing my mind.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah, I'm 74 and I'm still working on my first book. So give up. Okay.
Yay. Inspiration.
Was it Carla or Gina? Who was it? I had my screen when you were.
Yeah, it was me, Gina. I just got my book down at Auntie's. So Kelly was talking about her daughter that's working. Carrie or Kari's working with Auntie.
Yeah, Carrie.
Yeah. Anyway, I was in the Spokesman Review 3 times here in the last 6 weeks. I published 2 articles in the Faith and Values, and then they did an interview of me as an author. And so people were calling about the book, and I just took some copies down to Auntie's bookstore. This is my devotional. I can't rest now, Lord, I'm responsible. 30 days from burnout to the heart of God. And so they now have it on the shelves at Auntie's. It was wonderful. People that had read the article then went to Auntie's and purchased the book. My book's been out a little over a year. And I'm working on a memoir now. So my memoir, and then I want to get my children's stories published. So but one thing about getting older, which I really appreciate, is that the stress of the younger years and all of the commitments and obligations, I'm retired now, I have the time to finish these things. And so I just pray for the stamina, naps occasionally, but I have the time. And so there comes a time when your table is clear and you really are ready to dig in and do it. So don't be discouraged. You have lots of years, Lord willing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm not trying to rush everybody off, but I know folks do have sometimes a time.
Understandable, understandable. Boy, I loved what Kelly shared tonight. Kelly, that's so inspirational and so fun. And you're so real, and you just make us laugh out loud. And we so appreciate your freedom. Your freedom causes other people to be free. And so what a wonderful presentation.
Well, thank you, Gina. And we're in this together, aren't we?
Amen. Yeah, I can't wait to get back though. I can't wait to get back to, meeting
Real
together.
life. Have you guys gotten your shots? I got my first shot today.
Oh no, not yet. Yeah.
Don't forget to get your shots.
I caught COVID, so my doctor, I'm gonna wait a little while before the shot because I had it for about 5 weeks. So it's a beast of a virus.
Yeah.
I'm glad you do
Thank
Well, I knew that Kelly was so knowledgeable, and she was.
Oh, amen.
But I had no idea she'd be this entertaining.
Oh, so fun.
You didn't know I was this weird, huh, Linda?
Oh, you're great. You're great. And that would be a fun children's story too, or even a story for adults. The one you just did with all of us. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Who knew I could talk to grown-ups too, huh?
Amen. Yeah. Do you know if Ken Nesbitt, when he does indie publishing, if he went with Amazon KDP or if he did Ingram Sparks, or do you have any idea?
He has another publisher that he's used that he finds produces nice books. I think you could probably email him. If you don't have his email address, let me know and I'll get it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And find out who he uses. I think it's actually somebody here in town.
Okay. Yeah. Might be Grey Dog. Grey Dog Press does some wonderful things down on Sprague.
Yeah, definitely.
But, okay. Well, that's great.
Added her, that's your email, right? On the chat. So anybody else want to add anything, don't forget before we go.
Kelly, I'll send you a short story. Could you possibly meet for coffee or something down the road?
Maybe down the road when COVID's gone. I'd love to.
Okay, great.
But go ahead and send it to me and I'll look it over and give you some.
Yeah, appreciate your time and all your stories, and it's encouraging.
Good.
Yeah.
Don't give up. The only way you lose is if you give up.
I work with her daughters, and boy, she's passed a lot on to them in her nature. So,
Yeah, that Carrie's a lot more ferocious than I have ever been.
yeah,
She is fearless.
both of them sweethearts.
Vanessa is soft like her mom. Carrie is who I want to be when I grow up. She's tough.
But she also cares, and that matters a lot. You can be,
She cares about everybody at the store.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for being with us, and
Thanks, Linda.
try to get this
Thank you.
on.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, we just love you so much. And thanks, Linda.
Thanks, Linda.
And
Thank you.